afternoon. Unitarian Universalists light a chalice to mark sacred space, to symbolize to merge into a great community of love and compassion. I invite Karen Barley forward to light our chalice. Thank you. May the light we now kindle shine brightly in all our hearts, reminding us of those who have died but have shared their flame with us and made our world better for having known them. The 23rd Psalm reads, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long." Please join me in a moment of prayer. God of grace and tender mercies, be with us and bless us gathered here. The curtain of death has fallen between us and one we love. Give us the strength and wisdom we need right now, the strength to face and endure our loss, and the wisdom to find in our grief ample thanksgiving for John Mark Thomas's life. God, who gives us life and receives us when our life is over, comfort us now. Your love gives us strength. Your grace gives us hope. May our confidence in your love and grace be unwavering. And may we be true to your love and glory. Amen. Dear friends, we have gathered here today to celebrate the life of John Mark Thomas, a father, a brother, a partner, a friend. It is good to be together. There are no words, no prayers, nothing I can say that will change the fact that John Mark has died. What we do have is one another and the comfort we can give each other. We have the memories of his love, his intelligence, his dedication to helping those struggling with homelessness and addiction, his deep faith. We must remember that the light has not gone out. The light that was in John Mark is within each of us still. It shines through his sons, James and Stephen. It shines through his sister, Suzanne. It shines through his partner, Karen. It shines through all who were touched by him and his significant time with us. So let us celebrate this light and this life. Remember that to celebrate John Mark is not to ignore the pain or sorrow his dying causes us. Rather, it is to say yes to John Mark. You were unique. You were your own person. You matter. Though tears may fall, let them be of joy, because John Mark is alive in each one of us as we celebrate him. His love remains in all of us. For 50 years, John Mark was a member of First Parish UU in Needham, Massachusetts. And I invite the minister, the Reverend Katie Scudera, to bring greetings from those who loved and journeyed with John Mark for so many years.
Thank you, Reverend Kristen. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Reverend Katie Scudera, minister of First Parish in Needham Unitarian Universalist. As you know, it's a bit farther from here, but I see a bunch of our folks have come down from Needham to join with the friends that John Mark made in Barnstable here. I'm grateful to Reverend Kristen and to John Mark's family for including his Needham community in today's service, and I bring you greetings from First Parish and from Needham, where John Mark's presence will be missed and where his legacy will carry on. John Mark joined First Parish in Needham in 1967 with his first wife Carol and their 3 sons. Though relatively new in town, John Mark was a committed advocate for implementing the Federal Fair Housing Act at the local level in the 1970s. And as you'll hear much more about later from John Mark's friend, fellow volunteer, and fellow first parishioner Rick Vincent, John Mark was the founder and backbone of the Generic Ministry, an incredible organization offering respect, compassion, and needed goods to unhoused folks in downtown Boston. John Mark also met his second wife, Phyllis, at First Parish, and they were deeply involved at our church and its social life. John Mark was one of the first people who I got to know well when I arrived in Needham in 2014, but sadly not because of his long-standing membership at First Parish, nor because of his work with Generic Ministry and with fair housing. At the start of my interview week with First Parish in Needham, John Mark's son Chip died from complications from alcoholism. I officiated Chip's memorial alongside my colleague from Needham's Methodist Church, where John Mark and his then partner Deborah had been attending. John Mark was a devoted but ecumenical church-goer, and for many decades was also devoted to Alcoholics Anonymous, both for his own sobriety and to help others maintain theirs. My condolences go again to Chip's brothers, Stephen and James, for his loss and now their fathers as well. And though John Mark has spent much of the last decade at his home in Barnstable and with all of you wonderful folks at this Unitarian church, he was never a stranger in Needham or at First Parish. Again, you'll hear more from Rick about John Mark's ongoing leadership and involvement with Generic Ministry, but I'll share that the last times I saw John Mark were because he was a very good friend. I'd regularly bump into him when I was visiting another first parishioner who was succumbing to dementia and then died last summer. I hold in my heart a bittersweet memory of finding the pair of them in a beautiful sunny corner of the memory care unit, their voices and laughter bouncing down the hallway. Again, John Mark will be missed in Needham, and especially at First Parish and with the Generic Ministry. And again, I am so grateful to be here with all of you so I can learn more about the life he developed here in his late retirement. I'm so glad that he found you all, and thank you again.
I invite you all to rise in body or spirit and join me in hymn number 20 in your gray hymnal, Be Thou My Vision. son, James Ford, to share some reflections about his dad.
Too much connection here. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. As we go, reminisce John Mark's life. My dad was a private, outgoing individual. His moral compass taught me some of my first conscious decisions. My Aunt Suzanne wants me to remind me to note his dedication to humanity. Steve likes to think about his visits. He was the force of wisdom for me. He was the person I would ask questions, not answering the way I wanted, but honest desires motivated his answers. Alas, all the people that influenced his life escape me. But he shared a letter from Hazel that indicated how much of a giant influence she was on his life. So that the spring has indicated to me again his motivation to educate and protect those close to him, his dedication to what he believed was unending. Even on his deathbed, he wanted to keep his sister in line. He made sure Steve heard his message, and he asked me all the hard questions. All sure indications of his love for us. His leadership skills echo across a light year of thread. He accomplished food for the hungry, caring for offspring. He worked for the freedom of speech and respect was demanded for everyone by him. Thank you. If we could just pause for a moment. Maybe we can pray as we each have our favorite story to tell. John Mark influenced everyone with kindness and rule of law, advocating for the elevation of the words that meant the most to him. Live with passion, understanding the statements, other constructs that delivered his messages. That's all I can bear. Thank you all for coming.
I'd like to invite Rick Vincent from Generic Ministry forward to share his thoughts.
He's with me. I ask for your forgiveness if I take a little bit more than the normal amount of time to reflect on John Mark. It's extremely difficult for me to condense my thoughts and those of others as we think upon John Mark. I most humbly ask for your indulgence as together we celebrate the full life of a man who did so much for so many. I begin with this passage written by 12th century French philosopher, medieval scholar, and humanist Bernard of Chartres. We are like dwarfs sitting on the shoulders of giants. Our glance can thus take in more things and reach farther than theirs. It is not because our sight is sharper, nor our height greater than theirs. It is that we are carried and elevated by the high stature of the giants. On this gorgeous and glorious afternoon, I stand in front of you and with you with an open and heavy yet full heart. Heavy because of the profound loss of a compassionate and passionate man, and full because of the impact he had on me, on Generic Ministry, and Boston's homeless, his other family, about which he cared so completely. I am a friend of John Mark and a board member of Generic Ministry. I have been a volunteer for over 15 years and have loved being a part of this incredibly passionate and vital charity that has served Boston's homeless with great pride and joy. I'm honored to be here today to share a few words and memories of the gentle giant of a man. First, I would like to share my extremely brief view of the rise of Generic Ministry. John Mark was deeply moved by the plight of the homeless community in Boston, and with the help of 3 others, formally started Generic Ministry in 2002. It was a very humble beginning with his car, a house and storage for blankets and a few other supplies, and very importantly, a handful of dedicated friends. Yes, those individuals were the seeds, but one cannot overlook the fact that First Parish and Needham congregations' fiercely strong and uplifting support, which remains to this very day, was critical in the nascent growth and evolution of John Mark's pride and joy. A productive awareness program and a slightly new cargo van, which by the way was a repossessed vehicle, the shrewd and frugal John Mark, were the springboard to more supplies and greater success in serving the ever-increasing homeless population over a wider area. The financial crisis of 2008 had a major impact on our charity, as we had a great dwindling in the supply of our volunteers, and at one point we had only $100 in our bank, and almost caused us to cease operations. But with John Mark's leadership, vision, and compassionate guidance, Generic Ministry blossomed into a more powerful and dynamic platform for social justice. Generic, we persevered during the pandemic, re-engineering our strategy so that we would provide critical supplies to other agencies who could then distribute them directly to the homeless. Fast forward, and we now have a new state-of-the-art cargo van donated by a very caring couple who have given us unfailing support for decades. And a core of 40 to 50 volunteers who every week not only provide many more necessities and comforts, but more importantly, engage more deeply and show respect to such a vulnerable community. John Mark was the maestro. He was the maestro who made sure his dream would never vanish, rather that it would flourish, and that it would continue to make life a little better for the unhoused, whom he truly loved. That's John Mark, the inspiration of a charity, the personification of a charity, and not just any charity, but a charity with a massive heart. What about the man? After being a volunteer for about a year, I got together with John Mark and he said, "I'm ready to be a rider." He gave me that quick, wide smile and said he would be the driver on my first run. I was elated that he was going to take me under his wing and show me the ropes. As we drove to the city one night, he could sense I was a little nervous. He quickly calmed me down with a light tap on my shoulder and regaled me with a number of stories about his experiences in serving the homeless. He prepped me and told me that once we parked near Boston Common, we would be greeted by 2 or 3 men who were not direct volunteers of Generic Ministry, but longtime friends who would help us with crowd control and any behavioral issues that might arise that evening. Well, this unnerved me somewhat, but he reassured me that all would be fine, that even if there were any disruptions, no harm would be done, that I would be happy that I joined him, and that I would be a different man by the end of the evening. Well, what a baptism it was, I have to tell you. We had a specific parking spot in front of the Cathedral Church of St. Paul, right beside the Boston Common. It was a very appropriate spot because the church had a social justice program that still supports the homeless community, and it was a location where the unhoused like to congregate. It was a hot and muggy evening, and there were about 12 to 15 people who represented the first wave of homeless that advanced towards the van, as John Mark and I hopped out of the van to begin handing out the clothing, blankets, toiletries, food, and water. John Mark stood outside the back of the van while I crouched inside. He would grab a plastic bag as he greeted everyone who lined up. I was the distributor of whatever was requested. I would give them to John Mark, who would put them in a bag and give them to the person. Pretty straightforward, right? It was that way until some pushing and shoving began as people complained about how some others were cutting in line. John Mark used his calm and gentle form of persuasion to subdue that small uprising, letting them all know that everyone, while we knew they were hungry and wanted some food and basic necessities, should be patient and that everyone would be served. Good, so I thought. It was not much later that the fellow whom he was serving got really upset and demanded more items. He'd had a bit too much to drink. He got in John Mark's face. John Mark was very calm. He firmly indicated that such behavior would not be tolerated, and that if the man wanted to be served, he should be happy with what we gave him, that we did not always have enough of a particular item, or even that the desired item was available. We reassured him that we would try to fulfill his wishes next time. John Mark grabbed the bag from John Mark and sauntered away. John Mark just smiled as if nothing had happened and greeted the next person with another smile. Super. All serene, thought Rick, the rookie on the block. Well, you will recall that I said it was a bit of a stifling evening, and indeed, tempers began to flare. I do not remember the specific reason, but a small fight broke out, and a few bodies hit the rear of the van and the side of the van. John Mark's friends sprang into action, and they were able to quell it quickly. During the scuffle, John Mark told me to stay in the van, and he closed the door to protect me. The doors, I should say. After that quieted down, which was very quickly, he opened the doors, made sure I was not totally unnerved, and reassured me that all would be fine. Before we resumed serving, in his gentle but extremely firm manner and more forceful tone, he reminded our remaining friends that while we all might be a little frustrated, it was important to respect one another and to not fight. He very politely admonished them and announced that were there any more fights or disruptive behavior, that would be cause for us to lock the van and drive away. He told them he did not want that to happen. Peace prevailed. Yes, peace prevailed. And you know what? Despite all the moments of disruptive, discontent, and boiling over frustration that surrounded me, the few moments of aggravation and concern were minimal compared to the feeling of an overwhelming exhilaration of helping and engaging with such a vulnerable, very grateful community. I was hooked. More importantly, I was in the presence of a man who continually showed compassion in the face of such maddening behavior. I was in the presence of a man who loved what he was doing, knew in his heart he was doing what was right, and knew that this was his calling. I like to think I'm a person with great empathy, but John Mark made it even stronger. I've always lived by the golden rule, but John Mark's example on that day made it even more meaningful. John Mark's demeanor and words set a profound example of how to show class and respect, regardless of the manner or nature or degree of any confrontation or challenge. John Mark did not want to close any door on anyone, especially the ones to whom he gave his all. Before I move on, I'd like to share some comments and memories about John Mark. I want to say this as well. There were some qualities that were ever present in John Mark and that are hard to find nowadays. I never heard him complain about anything or anyone. I never heard him make a negative comment about anyone. I think that is because he was filled with goodwill. Actually, in fact, I offer you this. I consider John Mark to have been a benevolent man. That is to say, and I quote, someone who is inherently kind, compassionate, and generous, with a genuine desire to do good and provide help or aid to others without expecting anything in return. They act with goodwill and have a sympathetic, caring nature, often through acts of charity or support for others in need. Yes, I know that John Mark was a most benevolent man. I do want to share some other comments and memories from dear friends of John Mark, some of whom could not make it, and some who have known him for many decades. Here are some comments from the board of Generic Ministry. John Mark was a kind, gentle, giving, humble, calm, and serene man. A kind and respectful man. A visionary and trailblazer. Always willing to lend a hand wherever and whenever needed. An inspiring leader with great wisdom and knowledge. A true mentor who always was caring and encouraging. And from a longtime friend and fellow Generic Ministry volunteer, always believed in another chance for all of us. At its heart, his work was about faith and hope. Here are several memories from Judy Hansgen, a longtime friend and fellow Generic Ministry, who was with John Mark from almost the very beginning. After I rode with John Mark for a month, I wanted to drive. I asked him if he wanted a copy of my license or anything else, to which he said no. I still held it out, asked if he was sure, and he replied, "No, I trust you have a license." 2 weeks later, my son was pulled over for rolling through a stop sign in a car registered in my name. The policeman gave him a warning and said, "Is Judy Hansgen your mother?" To which her son Josh replied, "Yes." The policeman said to tell her that her driver's license expired in February. John Mark thought this was hysterical, and she said he was a great, great human being. Back in 2006, when I first started, there was a place called the Night Center. There was a crowd that was a little rough sometimes. It would be outside the building from time to time. Some nights when we had a lot left on the van, John Mark and I could not stand being able to distribute those surplus supplies to those who were in need. We were not allowed to stop there, but we persevered. We would park, John Mark would take the socks, I would take the food and water, we would race through the crowd as quickly as we could, and hop in the car, and race away, smiling all the way home. I ran into John Mark at the hospital one day. I did not realize he was sick, but he was smiling and said, "I had cancer, but now it's in remission. It's wonderful what they can do." That was John Mark. All positive, glass always half full. He was the kindest, least judgmental person I think I have ever known. His worldview was so positive. He invited us to his home in the Cape. I could see why he loved it. He told me how he decided to move there, even though it meant that he would have less time with sharing his life in Needham, and his role with Generic Ministry would lessen. That was very hard for me, because he was Generic Ministry. He was right, though, as he got to do all the things he loved, while he got to see his vision grow and expand. Finally, from Judy, her comment, I honestly believe that we are all better for having known him. Lastly, this from Emma Navalis, the president of Generic Ministry. John Mark was truly a great and gentle man. He was the face, the heart, the soul of Generic Ministry. And we credit our success to his constant presence and passion for our mission. John Mark was a stalwart member of our board. His leadership and wisdom guided us for over 22 years and will remain in our hearts as we try to follow, or will strive, and we will follow in his footsteps. I will miss J.M. deeply. We are like dwarfs, sitting on the shoulders of giants. Our glance must take in more things and reach farther than theirs. It is not because our sight is sharper, nor our height greater than theirs. It is that we are carried and elevated by the high stature of the giants.
It is a tradition at Unitarian Universalist Celebrations of Life to give people an opportunity to share a brief anecdote or story about John Mark. So everyone can hear you, I encourage you to hold the mic like this. If you don't, people won't be able to hear what you're saying. So I invite anyone who feels moved to stand, and I will bring you the mic.
My name's Guy. I have another name, but we're anonymous. I'm an alcoholic. I met John Mark in 1993 and became almost, he disappeared for a couple of years and came back, but he became one of those extraordinary friends who we talked to only occasionally, but who was a really close friend. And we went on in that state for a long time. By some chance, I chipped out of him his work at Generic Ministry. And he wasn't going to talk about that sort of thing. So the person was. I found out about his work because I went to meetings downtown, and there were 2 or 3 people I knew who lived on the street who we used to see. Some of them were smart AA meetings, but they came. And I mentioned them to John Mark one day, and he said, oh, well, I might be able to help them out there on the street. And I went, what are you talking about? And he sort of chipped out of it what he was doing. Now, it went on like that with John Mark. He only outwardly told us in Needham that he had cancer. He was a little bit ill, and then we didn't see him. Then he came back and he owned up. That's the John Mark one.
My name is David, and I'm calling from Nana. I'm glad to be here this afternoon. I've known John Mark for quite a few years, and as Rick has already told us about the great work he did in Boston, I was aware a long time because I worked at the Pine Street Inn going way back, about 12, 13 years. And what wasn't mentioned today, I assume a lot of his friends from Needham know, he also worked at the Long Island Shelter, which did terrific work. It's closed a couple of years now, but he did great work there. But, he treated, as Rick said, everybody with respect and dignity, and that's a challenge in the streets of Boston, don't I know, at the Pine Street Inn, that's for sure. But he was so kind and gentle to everybody, and then when he came down the Cape, the same thing, helping people in recovery, never giving up on people, driving people to meetings, giving people money, listening to them, which is most important, and just doing everything he can to help people with the utmost respect and dignity. He's a real gentleman and a gentle man, and I'm going to really miss him. And I think us in the Cape are certainly going to miss him, and the homeless are really going to miss him. And thank you for listening.
My name's John, and I met John Mark in that room over there some years ago. And he had, in a relatively short 5 or 6 years, very positive impact on my life on many levels. But in his last few days in the hospital, we had a few short hours just one-on-one together, just after his diagnosis, and talking about what was to come, what might become, and so forth. One night he asked me, he says, "Will you remember me?" I said, "Of course I will." He says, "How will you remember me?" And I said, "Well, I'll remember you as being a fair and kind man." And he looked at me and he says, "I like that. I would like to be remembered that way." I said, "Well, that's how I'm going to remember you, as a fair and kind man." And that is it.
Hi, I'm Judy LeGrand, Purpose Fellowship here. We met John Mark because he joined our small group ministries group of about 7 or 8 people. And I have to tell you, he was a very quiet man of few words. But the difference with John Mark was when he said those few words, he was worth listening to because he had something intelligent and wise and gentle to say, and you knew that what he said was definitely worth listening to. He brought up topics. Most of us are in our 70s and 80s in this group, so you need to know that too. But he brought up topics for us to discuss that were interesting. He brought us his obituary over a year ago and invited us all to start thinking about the end game and why we should explore that subject. And he just had a gentle way of giving you information and thought for the day and thought for the week. So I'll never forget him. He was a resource and a wonderful man, an intelligent man, and somebody that we all respected and loved.
Billy Oklahoma. I met John Mark 23 years ago when he worked at Bridges Recovery Detox Rehabilitation Center. And I ended up living with him for a while after what I did. My name's Billy Oklahoma. I met John Mark like 23 and a half years ago when he was working on rehab on Long Island, Bridge to Recovery. And he took me under his wing. You know, it became my secretary response for 23 and a half years. All right? But you never ministry with, I'm one of the founders. Right? There's four of us. There's John Mark, Georgie Gallagher, Bill Spring, and myself. I made Montford Drive my first meeting to the Park Street Station. I remember when being there when I got the license. You know, I was so proud. I was up there a long time ago. And I lost that license for the wrong drive. And you never do it. The last 10 years of my life, myself with children. And I remember always going through the lives of this. Monday was 10 years I've been children. One day at a time. With his help and the help of the They'll always be in my life. I met when I was 39, and I'm 63 now. You know, he's a beautiful person, always will be. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Larry Gordon. I'm a member of this church, but I also lived in Needham for 30 years before the year 2000 when my wife and I moved to Ukraine. I've known John Mark for over 40 years. John Mark and I were in the men's group in the Unitarian Church. We started out, we did a Robert Bly book, and the group just decided I wanted to continue it as a men's group. And then when Chris and I moved to the Cape in 2000, I kind of lost track of John. And all of a sudden, one day, I walked into the church and of course I recognized him. I said, John Mark? He said, yeah. He said, I got a house right down the street. I was so delighted and pleased that he had made Cape Cod his home and become a part of this wonderful congregation and this wonderful community. And as Judy pointed out, he was also a member of our small group ministry. I've always admired his intellect, his calmness, his intelligence, and his kindness. Thank you.
Greetings. Folks, I'm Andy. I'm an alcoholic, and I have a just gentle story. I also know John Mark from that room over there. And I went to visit him on August 6th, the day before his continuation of the afternoon of. And I went to the visitor's desk, and said, could you tell me John Mark's room? And they said, John Mark who? I said, John Mark. It never occurred to me that John Mark I just thought everybody knew John Mark. And that the last name was whatever it was, I never knew it. But anyway, I'm pleased to say that someone else had the intelligence to find that out for me. But what a lovely man. And one of the things he said shortly before that, and they texted me is, I know he knew he was dying. He said, please reach out to Susan, another person in our fellowship. That's John Mark. The final one is that when I left, I gave him a kiss, and he said, Give me another one. So yeah, that's John Mark.
Let us pray. God of grace and tender mercies, who will not let us go, will not let us down, will not let us off the hook. The spirit of John Mark that filled our world with love and delight, with challenge and commitment, has become one with your eternity. Grant all of us who feel this loss solace and a path to healing. May we find forgiveness for any perceived breach in our relationship with John Mark. May we find healing and peace in those relationships that transcend death. May we hold on to the good memories and in time let the sorrow fade. And may the love in our hearts join us together again and again to share stories of John Mark and our love for him. We know his spirit will always be with us. His love for us and our love for him will never die. Amen. Please join me in the Lord's Prayer as you feel comfortable. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. When I went to visit John Mark in the hospital, he told me he wanted a Christian memorial service. He wanted scriptures and Christian hymns. He wanted prayers and to hear the word Jesus. As we talked, I thought about a letter to the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Rome. I must admit I have not spent a lot of time at the beginning of his letter, but Romans chapter 8, verse 38 moves me. For I am persuaded that neither life nor death, nor height, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God in Jesus Christ. So often in our lives, we make mistakes. We miss the mark. We don't treat our children, our spouses, our friends the way they deserve to be treated, the way we want to treat them. So often in our lives, we can get fixated on our failings, our missteps, the real harm we have committed against ourselves and others. Romans 8 reminds us that nothing we do, nothing anyone else does or says to us can keep God from loving us, from forgiving us our sins, from redeeming our souls. Nothing in nature or the material world, nothing in the universe can prevent the love of God from embracing us. We judge ourselves often in the privacy of our own thoughts as unworthy of love, of salvation, of the promise of eternal peace. Jesus died on the cross for all our sins, not some of us, not only the best of us, but all of us. John Mark wasn't perfect. He had struggles his entire life. He struggled with addiction. He struggled with relationships. He struggled with doubts. He sometimes failed to be the person he wanted to be. However, knowing God's love, feeling God's presence and acceptance, he tried to live his life by the golden rule. and by Matthew 25:40. Truly I tell you, as you do unto the least of these, you do unto me. So John Mark helped organize a ministry for the homeless, to those who he believed were struggling most in the community. When John Mark finally recognized he needed help, he entered AA, which gave him a community of support and provided a spiritual outlet for his soul. I do not know if John Mark believed in an afterlife or in heaven, but our Universalist heritage tells us that God's grace is indeed universal. God's forgiveness is absolute, and all of us will be embraced by God's love in the end. John Mark was not ready to die. He had more he wanted to do. He had more he wanted to experience. He had more he wanted to share with his partner Karen and his sons and his friends. But he has begun the grand adventure, the next phase of his existence. Whether that is paradise, emerging into the great oneness of all, or as light in the hearts of all of us who loved him and who he touched. His spirit lives on in the universe and in a legacy he left for all of us to follow, for all of us to take up. I have attended services where ministers tell the mourning crowd not to be sad, but to celebrate the homecoming of their loved one in heaven. I cannot say this. You will be sad. You will feel lonely. You will feel lost. But with time, you can come to the point when the memories of your dad, the memories of your brother, the memories of your partner, your friend, will bring you more joy and comfort, where the goodwill outweighs the challenges, where the love fills the cracks in your heart. Nothing can separate you from the love of God, and nothing can separate you from John Mark's love. Hold on to it. Let it hold you. Let it guide you. Let it heal you. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join me in hymn number 101 in your great hymnal, Abide With Me. 3, 1-8. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up what has been planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace. In our grief and loss, may we always remember to embrace the love we shared with John Mark and carry it through our lives. This is our time to keep him in our hearts.